MBPsS Wellness Conversation podcast. The information shared on this podcast is not a substitute for seeking help from a certified wellness professional. And now here's Muthoni Njogu, MFT trained relational and sex therapist with today's episode.
Hi, my name is Muthoni Njogu. Welcome to another episode of Wellness Conversations podcast. I am so excited for the guest that we are having today. We have in the studio with us Cathy Holden. Yay! Cathy, welcome.
Thank you, Muthoni.
I don't even know where to begin. Okay, so let's just start off with how we met. Yeah, so we've known each other for quite a while. Go ahead, because you're the one who met me.
Oh yes. Yeah, most definitely. I think it was really nice how I met you actually. I had opened my practice, if you remember, just earlier on this year.
Right.
And I was kind of new to it, and I kind of thought, where else can I find another sex therapist in Nairobi or Kenya for that matter of fact? And I was like looking it up on Facebook, and then I found Sakina Wellness Center, and then I saw Muthoni Njogu, and I was like, hey, let me just shoot her a quick message.
I thought you were like a potential client. So I did my whole, new client spiel, and then you're like, no, I'm not really a client. Okay, so Cathy, you're another sex therapist. Let me explain a little bit about Nairobi. We are not as many sex therapists, and so when we meet a fellow practitioner, it's like coming back home, isn't it?
Yeah, most definitely. And it's so comforting to know that there's more out there that maybe we haven't met, and hopefully more, training to be certified sex therapists in the future.
I am so excited, let me tell you, because even for me, deciding to transition specifically to this kind of work was really hard. So I used to sort of dance around it. What was your experience like? Did you always know you wanted to be a sex therapist, or were you like me, who sort of like, dabbled one toe and then a second toe, and then put the full foot on the pool? How do you get to be a sex therapist?
Gosh, I'll try and keep it short.
All the time.
I can talk for hours. Okay, so what happened was about 3 years ago, I was having just a conversation. I was at a white party, actually, with a couple of friends, some good friends. And I came out and said, hey, I want to be a sex therapist. And at the time, I had just done 10 years in HR, so it came as a shock. And then they were like, oh yeah, okay, probably that won't happen. Not necessarily saying that it won't happen for me, but maybe they didn't take me seriously. But what I did is later on, so I got offered another job after that, and I kind of thought, oh, it's a step up, let me keep on practicing in HR. And then I just found myself wanting more and more to actually take a course and be certified, because I knew if there was one thing that I needed to do as my life's purpose, it would be this work. So I knew what I wanted to do, and I took the big leap and started getting certified this January.
Yay! I am so happy that you chose yourself. As you're speaking, I was thinking about Joseph Campbell's quote. It says, follow your beliefs, right? And so many of us get into this work, whatever avenue it is, it almost it may look like a second thought, to someone who's watching us. But at the core of it, this is the work that ignites us. So now that you said you've been practicing as a sex therapist you said you opened your business in June?
In June, yeah.
And how has that been for you? Because, this is Nairobi, this is not New York.
You know what? It's so true. I mean, I could say it's been challenging, and I wouldn't be like there's nothing to hide about it. It was definitely challenging, getting people to open up. But I think the most challenging thing for me was that getting calls from random people when I advertised my business to ask me whether I'm going to have sex with them or whether I have somebody else who's going to have sex with them. So I think also the notion of what a sex therapist does is really, really misunderstood. So I think that was my main challenge, actually.
Let me tell you, and we're not going to be naming names, but for me, one of the things that really led me to this work, because as I said, for a long time, I saw myself as a couple therapist, but I realized how important it is for folks who are in great need of our services to be around people that are professional, that are competent, that are trained, and that are ethically bound for me. And I realized that there's such a big need. People really want to feel valued and feel cared for and feel nourished in their primary relationships, and may just need some support in trying to navigate and create what that looks like. And what I realized that is there are folks out there, we're not going to name names, but there are folks out there who who advertise their work as sex therapists, but what they offer for people who are in great need is it's not ethical, it's not professional, it's not competent. And I think for me that was the last sort of straw that said, you know what, I need to get to do this. So I'm curious, where were you born?
Oh, what a random question. Okay, so I was born in Nakuru, actually.
Really?
Yeah. I was born in Nakuru. My mom is Russian. My dad is Kenyan. And I grew up here in Kenya until I moved to the UK, and I was in the UK for about 15 years.
Let me first say, when you said your mom was Russian, all I could think of was the Olympics that we used to watch as kids. And vodka and Tolstoy. That's like the only imagery that I have. So it sounds like you are from a very multicultural family. How has being raised in that family influenced you as a wellness practitioner?
Definitely. I think it's, and I would say in terms of my influences for that and who I am today, definitely down to my mom and my dad. I would really not be doing them justice by not saying that, simply because they were my pillars. I think I got to experience the best of both worlds, if you want to call it that. And of course, this is my personal opinion as a mixed race person. And also just getting the opportunity to see a different culture, for example, learn about the Russian culture, also understand Kenyan culture, and also being fortunate enough to study in the UK, which I feel so blessed that my dad was able to accord me, and seeing what that culture is like. And London is a very multicultural city, so in terms of the ideas that I have, the open-mindedness that I have, I don't feel restricted by my thoughts or anything that I believe in. I think a lot of the things that I feel and in terms of my core beliefs are very fluid, and I actually enjoy the work that I do.
I love that. And it's great, isn't it, when we see that even our family of origin can play such a pivotal role in the work that we do. And it sounds like from your family, just the multicultural aspect allowed you to glean into other cultures and realizing that there's no one dominant culture.
Yep. Totally. And I'm a strong believer that there is really just one race on Earth, and it's just the human race. And I think my exposure to different cultures has really made me see that and understand that and appreciate that really we're just all people looking for love, looking for acknowledgement, looking for to be paired up with somebody, looking for friendship, looking for care. We're all looking for the same thing. We get hurt the same way, or maybe in different grades.
Right.
But we're all the same.
Right. It's even I if we had a video to record our our session, people who want to like, wait a minute, they see, as you called yourself, a biracial, multiracial woman, and me, a Muslim woman, and both of us are sex therapists, and I know that it looks like it is not the norm with the work that we do. But what is normal? What does a sex therapist do? Yeah, let's start with that.
Wow. You're making me answer that? Fellow sex therapist? Okay.
Okay.
Well,
all right.
Okay. No,
Okay.
that's all right. That's a fair question.
Uh-huh.
And I think one of the main things that we do, and
Yeah.
I'm sure you will agree with me here, is we offer a place or a space with no fear, no judgment, no shame. Sexual issues, any kind of sexual issues or anything to do with sex, just the word alone emits this shame sometimes. I mean, there's a fear of saying it. There's a fear of being judged, and that's what we actually provide. And a lot of these things, especially, for example, somebody who's unfortunately had sexual abuse in their childhood, and that childhood trauma then carries on into their adulthood, it can affect them, how they live their life, how they see themselves. And sometimes what you do find in people who've had that early childhood trauma, and especially sexual abuse, they're not able to live a fulfilling sexual life. It's difficult.
Absolutely. And just to really to add on to that, I mean, for me, I see myself as a doula, as a midwife for folks, because our most intrinsic human desires that to connect, and to connect deeply, and our bodies are the vehicle in a lot of ways on how we connect. And so, as you said, when we have experienced attachment injury in one form or another, that negates our ability to connect deeply. And so, just like yourself, I mean, I have had people call me and ask me if I offer sex surrogate services, right? But we do know that in the States there are sex surrogates, which is like a whole other. I really want to talk about that. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So there was a movie, and I'm going to add this on the show notes, and I'm also going to add Cathy's information in the show notes as well. There was a movie a couple of years back where this guy was paralyzed from the neck down. Did you ever watch it?
I don't think so.
Yeah,
maybe I did.
Yeah, there's a movie, and I'll mention that on the show notes. And he wanted to experience some form of sexual contact, but he couldn't because he was paralyzed. And so he found there was a woman who worked with folks who were abled differently.
Yes.
And she came and she worked with him for about 4 or 5 sessions. And it was an amazing sort of journey to see that he was able to connect with himself in a meaningful way with somebody else. And so she would as they developed trust and safety, which is very important for any work, right? Yes. For any meaningful change and experience, safety and connection. And he was able to explore sexual interaction. Obviously, it was rather limited in a lot of ways.
Yes.
So that's my introduction to sex surrogacy. What's your?
I couldn't possibly add anything more on that. I think I just want to kind of reinforce that message to say that a sex therapist does not provide surrogacy. And there's an international body in the US that actually does that.
Right.
And I think that's important for people to understand. A sex therapist works with a surrogate, but they don't provide those kind of services.
Yeah. And I think also I think it's always good to sort of continuously provide I think information, because people don't really know what we do. Yes. They just think we facilitate sex surrogacy work and a whole bunch of orgies, right? That's
and
it.
I'm so glad that you said that, because even as sex therapists, one of the things that we do is we educate on sex.
Yes.
We demystify a lot of myths. If you know, you know. And I think that's a really, really important part of our work. And we can do that through talks. I've had 2 talks already in Nairobi, one in June and one just recently over the Nairobi garage, which I found that the audience grew from 13 people to just almost 50. So I know that things are, getting better, and I know people are becoming more open to listen. And I actually got some feedback today on the talk, and somebody actually told me, you know what, I just thought sex was just that. But what I learned at the talk, at the workshop, was amazing. That it has so many levels, that it's more than just penetrative sex. It has a lot to do with connection and relationships and, education, which is really, really important. I'm sure you'd agree.
Oh, yes, I would. Let me say congratulations. I wasn't able to come to the talks, but I hope the next one I'll get a chance to, because you're absolutely right. And it is not just about penetrative sex, but this is because this is the only ideas of sex that we have. It has to look a particular way, a particular style, at a particular time, right?
Yeah.
And so when we have clients that don't fit the norm, right?
Yeah.
It don't fit part of that. Can we say heteronormative norm? Yeah. How then as sex therapists do we navigate that? When we have religious or spiritual value systems that may not necessarily agree with some of the things that our clients are going through.
And I think that's really interesting that you said that and you've asked that question, because I think it's really important for a therapist, and it could be in general, it could be a sex therapist. We all have our core beliefs, our systems, everything that influenced us maybe when we were kids, from religion to our cultural practices. But one of the things that we cannot do as therapists is bring that into the room with us. We have to ensure that we are providing a clean slate with no judgment, no shame, and no fear. And by bringing in our own core beliefs into the room with this client, we will do them harm. And one of the things that we're not supposed to do as therapists is do anybody harm. And that can be done through judgment, through making somebody afraid, and through allowing somebody to feel shame. So it's important that we open up our minds in terms of diversify our thinking, and also do a little bit of research. I don't know about you, but I have this amazing tool that I have in terms of the kind of things, I think it's called the comfort scale. So there's different kind of things that are listed in terms of behaviors and genders and everything, and it gives you an opportunity to rate yourself so that you can find out where you are on the comfort scale with different things, and that also brings awareness to you depending on the kind of clients that are coming in.
that it's very similar to what we are trained. I'm a marriage and family therapist trained, so that's like my core foundation. And what, as we're going through that training, what it's continuously implored to us is to always have a level of self-awareness and self-introspection, and to always be aware when we are challenged. Because even as therapists, we're not a tabula rasa. We are what an amalgamation of all our influences, our culture, our family, our religion. And so what I do with whomever invites me into their process as their therapist, because it's an invitation, right? I don't just budge in and say, hey, I always say that, I am a Muslim, because I do wear the veil, so that's very visible. But I also say that, my work is to hold space for you. I am ethically bound to do so. And what that has done for me, it's really opened my heart space to hold space for folks I may not necessarily move in the same circles with. I know a lot of people think like therapy is beneficial for clients. It is, but it's beneficial for us as therapists as well.
Most definitely. And that's why it's so important for a therapist to have a therapist.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, people are like, what? You have a therapist? I'm like, yeah, I need a therapist as well. And people are like, but why? But I'm like, in order to be effective and in order to be able to hold space for you in the most competent ways, I need support as well. Yeah.
Definitely. And it's, it's a recommendation. I know about professional bodies. And it also just feels nice to be heard, to be listened to also share in a place where somebody is really listening to you, a professional. I mean, it's great to share with family and friends. People do that all the time, but having a professional to really just listen to you and allow you to go through any process, any triggers, because those happen. We've all got a bit of emotional baggage that we're carrying around, that we are healing through, and it comes out sometimes. So it's really nice to talk to somebody who understands.
You're absolutely right. And so there is no shame when you know that your therapist has a therapist. In fact, next time you go see your therapist, ask them if they have a therapist. I think that would be fair.
Most totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
I think that's a really good question to ask. So we want to sort of segue, although you did talk about the calling of your work, how you were doing HR.
Yeah.
And how that stopped working at some point.
Yeah.
And then sort of segued into sex therapy work. So let's talk about like what, I know it's not been like a very long time that you've been doing this work, but so far, what experiences have you learned that have stretched you, that are, I don't want to call them challenges, I want to call them opportunities for growth. What have you seen have been those opportunities that have really stretched you as a sex therapist?
Really good question. I think one of the things that for me is a theme is sex education. And that's one of the reasons I'm really big on sex education, but from a child safety perspective. So, and one of the things in certification that you learn or that you get to see and practice is the importance of providing age-appropriate information to kids as they're growing up. Now, there's lots of debates where if you talk about sex, then they're going to want to have it. I don't necessarily think or believe that this is the case. And of course, I can be challenged probably 100 times over for this. I do think that if a child is aware of their sexuality, and by the way, this is age appropriate. So what you would tell a 6-year-old is not the same as what you would tell a 15-year-old. It differs. If they know, or if they're aware of their sexuality, they may be able to save or not experience, for example, any kind of sexual abuse. Not to say that this is a given that it won't happen, but if, for example, they know that this is inappropriate touch, and they feel that they are growing up in a trusted environment and they know who they can actually turn to, let's say a guardian or a specific family figure or a parent, that they can go and report that actually can help them. Not knowing whether it's appropriate or inappropriate touch is actually quite dangerous. We're familiar with how offenders or people who offend in terms of sexual abuse, they groom. And how does that happen? With, little bits of inappropriate touch, which you may not pick up if you don't know about it. So I think I'm quite big on that.
Listening to you, and I know we have heard the last couple of years conversations nationwide about sex education, and like yourself, we can't live in a bubble. See, we can't live in a bubble. Children are a lot more exposed now, but we can forge what they know in an environment that they feel safe, where they securely attached to their primary caregiver. Mm-hmm. I think maybe could be one of the factors that there's so much stonewalling when it comes to creating comprehensive, age appropriate.
Yes.
we have to say
we have to say that.
We have to say age appropriate. Sex education material. Maybe it's also because we have never really reconciled what it means to be a sexual being in this African body.
Yeah,
we were colonized. And when you think about the ways that we were colonized, we were not just colonized in our minds. The way that we understood ourselves, the way we understood ourselves in our relationships, the way we understood ourselves in the environment, the kind of intimate partnerships we had. And so that was taken away from us, and we were given this idea that there was something primitive, and something very ungodlike about our very essence. I'm thinking about the story of Saja Bartman. Saja Bartman, for those who do not know, she was I think she was a Khoisan or woman. She was born in Southern Africa, and so when I think it was the Dutch, when they were like exploring that part of the world, she was captured, and she was put in this cage and paraded all through Europe.
Wow.
Because now she was considered this species. And when she died really young. They actually went, and her body was I don't know what they did with her body, and it was placed in museums for years. And I think maybe 15 years ago or something. I'm not sure about the timeline, how remains were taken back to Southern Africa. But our bodies, there was something inherently evil, we were taught. And our indigenous cultures had a very comprehensive sex, age appropriate, gender appropriate education. They had that. And when they would go through this initiation rites, both men and women and understood themselves. I don't know if you had that in your Kalenjin culture. What I, but this is like,
Sorry for raising my eyebrows.
You're like, I don't know, I need to ask. But I'm thinking, all cultures had some type of initiatory rituals, right?
Yeah, no, they did. And I think from what I remember, because I have an elder brother, I know my elder brother had that kind of initiation ceremony, although my sister and I weren't exposed to that. So we didn't experience that. So I think in my life or in my childhood, I remember that for my elder brother, and there was an initiation. So I do see where you're coming from with that.
Right. And in those times, I know like my grandparents, when they became of age, I don't know whether that was 11 or 12, I don't know. And so the boys of the village of that age group, that Rika, as we say in Kikuyu, they experienced circumcision.
Yeah.
They were now taught, okay, now you are becoming a man. This is what is required of you.
Yeah.
But people never talk about, it wasn't just the relationship with the community, it was also the relationship they had with the women in their lives. And I remember when I was in college, one of my professors was saying that if a man was not pleasing to his wife sexually, she could always go and speak to her aunts, and if that wasn't able to be resolved, she could also seek counsel from other men and the council of elders, because they understood if one partnership is not going well, the whole community was in distress.
Yeah.
You know, like the whole idea of Ubuntu, I am because you are.
Yeah.
So what we're saying, like long winding, and oh no, we're going round and round in circles, but but you see, sex is a very integral part of who we are.
Yep, totally. And I think me here would be the relationships, and when we grew up, what that looked like. The interactions, let's say, you know, with our parents or with our parents' friends, you know, what we saw, what was okay. Did we see holding hands? Did we see kissing? You know, what was love? How was love expressed? And, you know, my experience certainly was, you know, it wasn't something that was out there that everybody could see. So, you know, you grow up and kind of seeing that, but then you're also getting the Western influence where you're watching all these Hollywood movies.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where you'd see, you know, the holding hands and the touching, and you'd almost, holding hands and, you know, hugging, and you'd almost go and replicate that as you were growing up. And that was certainly my experience.
And many of us, you know, and we only had one TV station, remember?
Yes, we did. Just one, yeah.
Just one. That
showing our age.
Yes, we only have one TV station.
Yes.
And I mean, and which now when we think about it and what you're saying about this sort of schism as to how affection and intimacy was expressed, or what we learned the way it was expressed, right?
Yeah.
And how the only times many of us experience touch or saw touch but as children, maybe when we were being punished, and we never saw our parents or our relatives be affectionate. And it's really simple. It could be as simple as just holding someone's hand.
Yeah. And if you think about it, it's the fundamental piece when we're growing up as a kid and we're sitting in that little baby chair, okay? And we're kind of like reaching out for something, and, you know, we reach both our arms up and then we drop something. And, you know, think about that when you drop it. Who comes running? It could be your mom, it could be your dad, it could be your caregiver. But someone comes running, cleans it up, and then, you know, if you start crying, gives you a hug. And that is what builds self-esteem in kids. Because as a parent, you're responsible for your kids' emotions. And that hug that you give actually reinforces that. And then you grow up to be, a healthy kid where you know that you have to, there's certain things that you can do to ensure that your emotions are met.
And I mean, wow, I was thinking the other day how touch deprived we are. Like we really are touch deprived. And as I was coming to meet you and record this podcast, I saw some posters. We're in the, I don't know, can we call this the suburbs of Nairobi?
I guess.
Yeah. So we're in another side of town, and I saw these posters for a gentleman's club.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I don't see this in the other side where I live.
Mm-hmm.
And I imagined that it didn't really give a lot of details, but you can, if you understand the lingo, you know what this is about.
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine, and a lot of this is from conversations that I have with my clients, how men struggle with navigating, with asking for the ways to connect deeply.
Yeah.
And the issue that many of us have had is men have been given a very limited container of allowed, approved emotional expression. Like, you can be angry, but you can't cry. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can aggressively pursue someone, but you can't ask, hey, I want to be held.
Yeah.
And so some of this, so what we're seeing is, even with this rise of gentlemen's clubs in Nairobi, a lot of it also serving a need where many men have this deep sense of shame and deep desire to connect, but don't know where to put it.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny, well, not funny, but you mentioned that we're deprived of touch. And as sex therapists, we know that there is, there's a variety of different kinds of touch. So there's a sensual touch, there's a non-sexual touch. There's also that nurturing touch. There's so many varieties of touch, whereas sometimes when you're thinking about touch, you automatically just zoom into the sexual side of touch, and it's really not so, because a hug can actually be comforting and not sexual. But we don't always think about it that way, and maybe that's sometimes how we think about it, based on our core beliefs or what we picked up when we were kids.
Right. Yeah. The only way that you saw adults touching was anything that was leading to a sexual exchange. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. So you never saw your mom getting a hug from your dad because she had a rough day.
Yeah.
Do you get what I'm saying? I mean, did you? I don't know. I mean, you see what I'm saying? So we've been raised to really have very limited ideas of the ways that we can interact intimately.
Yeah.
It's very limited.
Yeah.
And the thing is though, why I feel like our work is really crucial at this point is because we are not growing in isolation. We have the internet. Do you see?
Yeah.
We have the internet. Mm-hmm. And so folks have avenues to explore some of these things that they have felt and have not felt safe. And so the anonymity of the internet is very comforting to a lot of people, to a certain degree.
Yes.
To a certain degree.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's almost provided a cover. I mean, think of our technology today. I mean, people are hooking up by sending DMs to each other. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's happening.
Yeah.
Facebook, Instagram, And those are how we are forming our social bonds, whether it's friendships, whether it's romantic. Then of course you have dating apps. Yeah. So that's where we're kind of headed. And if we're hooking up that way, are we always prepared for what comes when we finally meet?
That's a really good question. I was actually going towards the direction of one of the ways I like your work is that you are utilizing technology. I'm trying to catch up, but you are utilizing technology as a way to educate. So you're doing a lot of psychoeducation. You're doing a lot of interaction. I wish I was like you. I am trying to catch up with you, Cathy.
I know. I think when I first a few months ago, I would write articles and literally get like 1 or 2 likes, and I kind of thought, okay, how can I get more people to really listen to me? And then I realized that we're at this age where there's so much information, and do we? If you're thinking about getting the information, you want it quick and you want it now. So how can you get that? Hey, a video.
You're right. Let me tell you, I just did a video. It was like a 3-minute video yesterday. It took me 2 hours. There were so many retakes. I was like, I'm not about this life. Like, so when I see your work and you are very consistent with this, I think do you have like a timeline, like a time that you have to go and post your video at a certain time every day?
Yeah, so I post on WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, all my personal accounts and my business account, which is the Almond Tree Wellness Center. So I post every morning, 7 a.m. and there's a video every Sunday. So, and that's consistent.
Cathy is utilizing social media. So I am going to link all her social media platform channels on the show notes. I'm looking at the time and I'm like, it's almost an hour.
I told you we can talk for hours.
I mean, okay, so I guess because we need to sort of wind down.
Yeah.
I need to ask you, because this is a Wellness Conversations podcast, and my purpose for this podcast is to have delightful conversations with different wellness practitioners and not just therapists, because I see that we are all holistic and we have all these different understandings of wellness. So what does wellness look to you, Miss Rotich Holden?
Okay, thank you. You could have just said Cathy. But,
I could have, but I don't know. This was like way more fun.
Yeah, I know. I guess for me, wellness is what we're looking at. It's actually it's inside out. So wellness for me is taking care of who you are on the inside, and then that can actually help you feel better on the outside. I'm a big believer that our brains are amazing. Our brains are that's where a lot of information is stored. Our memories. If you're thinking about the limbic system, a part of our brain, which is the animal side of the brain, where it's fight or flight, protect, and then you have your frontal cortex, which is the one that's kind of thinking. How is that functioning? Is everything okay? And one of the things that limits us is when we have trauma, because what happens is our limbic system kind of ties in with our body. And, as much as our thinking brain is kind of saying, yes, I want to do this, our limbic system is shutting it down because it's shutting down our body. I'm also a big believer in terms of where wellness is also on the outside. So, for example, the stomach, it's our second brain. A lot of hormones are actually in there, And that's one of the reasons why we need to have a good balance. So it's really inside out. And gosh, it's an interesting question, because what would wellness look like to me? I think wellness would look like to me in terms of everybody's actually going through a journey. Everybody has struggles. Everybody have things that they're working on. And you know what? It never ends. And what can we do to be the happiest that we can be? And how do we define ourselves without the things and the people in our lives? Who are we? That would be wellness for me.
Wow, I really love that. I'm just listening to you and I'm like, oh yeah, she's talking about neuroplasticity. Oh my God, she's talking about gut health. Oh, wait a minute, as above, so below. Like it's true, like wellness is really a comprehensive, and yet it's subjective, because what is wellness to you is wellness to me. May not be wellness to me. Like it's specific to your experience.
Yeah.
And I like what you said when you said that really life is a journey. I think Aristotle described it best when he said, the journey is a destination. So the yummy, delicious part is not when you reach there, it's how you get there.
Yeah.
Which is why I like the work that we do, because the pleasure of sex is not necessarily orgasm at the end.
Yeah.
It's how.
It's all the things in between.
All the things in between. There you go. It's all the stuff that's in between. And our job, I believe, is to support folks in
that process. And finding themselves and finding what they like. And if it's something that they don't like, how can they come to terms with it? Because there are some things that you can't change, but how do you come to terms with it? How are you truly fulfilled? How can you have a fulfilling sex life? And it seeps into the relationships that we have, and how you're building intimacy and passion in your relationship. And whether that's for one day or for a lifetime, we're not to judge.
And that's where we will end. I think you have to come back. Cathy. Miss Holden. I'm just going to be calling you Miss Holden now.
That's okay.
We have to come back because I feel that and which is really the core purpose of this podcast is this types of conversation.
Yeah.
Because I believe, you and I have these conversations, right? We're practitioners, so we can have these conversations. But what about someone out there who would want to have these conversations but doesn't know where to start?
Yeah.
And whatever content that's out there is very specific to a particular location.
Yeah.
But you see, we're in Nairobi. This makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So I hope you'll join us next time, right?
Oh, most definitely.
Most definitely. So, Miss Holden.
Here we go again.
Thank you for joining us. I will definitely add all your information on the show notes. Please connect with Miss Holden on, you said you're on Facebook,
Instagram, LinkedIn, and WhatsApp.
Right. So I guess until then, thank you so much for listening, and remember, healing is your birthright. Next, I'm so excited. I don't want this to end. So until next time, enjoy the rest of your days, and we'll talk soon. All right. Bye.
Bye.
This is Wellness Conversation Podcast. The information shared on this podcast is not a substitute for seeking help from a certified wellness professional.